This may be the most important view graph I have to show. If you don't remember anything else from this presentation, I urge you to remember this one. So I'm going to spend a little more time on it. You can see the top line from 1980 to 2000 is the growth of the gross domestic product in China, and on the bottom is energy. Now, it happens that the conventional wisdom is that for a developing country, energy grows faster than GDP. And when I first went to China in the mid-'80s, and I was told that, in fact, energy was growing slower than GDP, I was loath to believe it, because everything I had learned was as a country industrializes, this was policy. This was not happenstance. Deng Xiaoping announced in 1979 that China was going to quadruple GDP in 20 years, from 1980 to 2000, and only double energy. Now, how he came to make that announcement is an interesting story, which I better not tell you now, or I'll get in big trouble. But it was a profound statement, recognition that basically if China wanted to grow its economy, improve the well-being of its people, it had to do energy efficiency. The country could not have afforded the investment in energy supply, and it would have suffocated if energy had grown just as fast as GDP, when in fact before 1980 it was growing twice as fast as GDP. So this was a dramatic situation. Think of it another way. If energy had grown just as fast as GDP, which would have been seen as somewhat successful for a developing country during this period, China would be using 3 times as much energy as it is. China would be responsible not for 20% of energy-related greenhouse gas emissions, but 55 to 60%, 55% of greenhouse gas emissions in the world. And that's if they had simply done a little better than most developing countries during this period. So I think it's very important to know this one chart. And if I go at this rate through the rest of them, well, unfortunately, the story wasn't uniformly good. In the year 2002, continuing through 2005, this trend, this long-term success of the 3 years from 2002 on, there was this sense, it was almost like Reagan had come to China and the market could solve all problems. Let's unleash the forces of the market and everything will go well. And we were saying, crying in the wind, Barbara and her colleagues were saying the same thing. You need to have regulations to have an effective market. Well, so in any case, in 2006, had a remarkable announcement, not from the government, from the communists, but from the Politburo of the Communist Party. And that's remarkable because the Politburo doesn't get into this level of policy unless it's crisis. And it said we're going to have a 20% reduction in energy intensity of the entire economy in 5 years. So that became the policy of China. They had a number of activities to do this, and the first area they call 10 key projects, of which I think there are 5 that are particularly important. And then there's industrial energy use, where they designated, I mentioned this earlier, the top 1,000 industrial enterprises, and they were each given a quota to achieve over the period. I might mention they have done better than their quota. Most of the companies are 75, 80, or even 100% of the way toward their quota today after 3 years. toward their 5-year quota. So that's been enormously successful, or you might say their quota was a little bit low, and I would say both. I think my generalization is China has done everything it can think of that is practicable in a policy sense to promote energy efficiency, to achieve this goal. They have pushed on appliance standards. They have fuel economy standards that are better than ours. They have industrial energy efficiency, which other than some countries in Europe, it's in the U.S., for example, we've been noted for our absence of industrial energy efficiency policy. They have in transportation, in addition to fuel economy standards, they have promoted mass transit, put a huge amount of money into mass transit, including their stimulus funds. I'm hard-pressed to think of anything they haven't tried to do. Now, having said that, except maybe, not only have they done the policies that we know about, but they've done other things that I think are highly imaginative and very significant. And the one that I use as the best example is the financial incentives that they've provided for energy efficiency investments in any of the top 10 projects. They've put, you can see, more than $1 billion in 2007 and close to $2 billion in 2008, and more money than that in 2009. It's going to be a continuing growing fund. It hasn't all been used in the year that it was allocated, but it's available for use. What's creative about this is that it's an incentive in which you get 60% of the money up front, which helps you make the investment, but you only get the other 40% if you can demonstrate that you've actually saved the energy. I forgot one other innovative policy. The assignment of the goal is part of the responsibility system that China has, which they've amended to require that an official has to meet the goal if he or she is to be promoted. And indeed, if you produce falsified numbers relating to achievement, that is a criminal offense. So they're very serious about all this stuff. Well, so the result of all this has been that the curve has turned down again. And indeed, relative to GDP growth in 2008, energy growth declined by more than 4.5%. So that's back to where energy growth was relative to GDP in the classical period of 1980 to 2002. And it looks like they have a very good chance of meeting a goal.